President Trump's case for excluding illegal aliens from the census is stronger than you think. Hello, this is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button. Today we're going to be talking about President Donald Trump's executive memorandum to the Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross, instructing him not to include illegal aliens in the census count this year in 2020 for the apportionment of representatives. This is thought to have big implications for how representatives will be allocated dependent upon the illegal alien populations in each of the states. And particularly California, which is a sanctuary state, seems to get more representatives than it might deserve because it allows for illegal aliens and invites illegal aliens to live in their state. And so President Trump saying, no, we don't have to do that, that he has discretion under both the Constitution and federal law to determine who gets counted and who doesn't get counted as a permanent legal inhabitant. And I think that this is obviously going to go to court, and it's going to be, I think, a subject of considerable controversy for this year. Expect legal challenges almost instantly. But this is a memorandum for the Secretary of Commerce excluding illegal aliens from the apportionment base following the 2020 census. By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States, it is hereby ordered as follows. Section 1. In order to apportion representatives among the states, the Constitution requires the enumeration of the population of the United States every 10 years and grants Congress the power and discretion to direct the manner in which the decennial census is conducted. Now, the Congress has charged the Secretary of Commerce with directing the conduct of the decennial census in such form and content as the Secretary may determine. By the discretion of Congress, the Secretary then transmits to the President the report of his tabulation of total population for the apportionment of representatives. The President, by law, makes the final determination regarding the, quote, whole numbers of persons in each state, which determines the number of representatives to be apportioned to each state, and transmits these determinations and accompanying census data to the Congress. The Congress has provided that it is, quote, the President's personal transmittal of the report to Congress that, quote, settles the apportionment of representatives among the states, and the President's discretion to settle the apportionment is more than, quote, ceremonial and ministerial, and is essential to, quote, the integrity of the process. That's Franklin v. Massachusetts from 1992, a Supreme Court decision. Now, here President Trump is saying basically that we're not going to include illegal aliens, this is coming, the power, of course, comes from the 14th Amendment, Section 2 of the Constitution, which states, representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed. Now, from the President's memorandum, the justification for excluding illegal immigrants is this, quote, the Constitution does not specifically define which persons must be included in the apportionment base. Although the Constitution requires, quote, persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed, to be enumerated in the census, that requirement has never been understood to include the apportionment base every individual physically present within a state's boundaries at the time of the census. Instead, the term, quote, persons in each state has been interpreted to mean that only the, quote, inhabitants of each state shall be included. So who are the inhabitants? Here the President's memorandum gets specific. To determine the inhabitants, it, quote, requires the exercise of judgment. For example, aliens who are only temporarily in the United States, such as for business or tourism, and certainly foreign diplomatic personnel, are persons who have been excluded from the apportionment base in past censuses. So that raises the question, if tourists whose travel visas have dates of expiration which are certain can be and have been excluded from the census, then why not illegal immigrants who are subject to removal upon discovery by federal authorities? Now, I found an interesting case, Burns v. Richardson, which asked a similar question about Hawaii and its apportionment via state legislature districts. The Supreme Court held that tourists and other non-permanent residents could be excluded from Hawaii's apportionment for the state legislature because, quote, total population figures may thus constitute a substantially distorted reflection of the distribution of state citizenry. which the court said would have granted more representatives to Oahu than were owed under the state's constitution. So now the same can be said for sanctuary states like California, whose own non-legal resident population can skew the census and has skewed the census and award additional seats in the House that the state might not otherwise be entitled to if only legal residents were accounted for. Now, given that illegal immigrants are not legal residents, they are temporary migrants, they could be treated as the same as tourists under the law. At least that's what the president's saying here. The question is whether, like in the Burns decision, who is being counted constitutes a, quote, permissible population base for the purposes of the census, in the words of the court. Now, they don't really define what a permissible population base is, but President Trump is defining it. He's calling it the apportionment base for the 2020 census. Now, various estimates over the years have stated that anywhere from 11 million to 30 million illegal aliens could be residing in the U.S., but nobody knows for certain. And when President Trump tried to have a question included on the census, for citizenship, he wanted to ask everybody, are you a citizen? And it would be an honesty test, but the Supreme Court summarily shot it down in 2019, and he had to pursue a fallback plan after that. So under a July 11, 2019 executive order, Trump instead ordered departments and agencies of the federal government to supply data that could be used by the census in tabulating how many illegal aliens are in the population. But without a citizenship question included on the census. So they're just going to use federal data to tabulate what the population is going to be. Instead, the Trump executive order requires, quote, all agencies shall provide the Department of Commerce the maximum assistance permissible consistent with the law in determining the number of citizens, non-citizens, and illegal aliens in the country, including by providing any access that the department may request to administrative records that may be useful in accomplishing that objective. In addition, the order specifically requires the following records to be furnished to the census. Quote, national level file of lawful permanent residence naturalizations from DHS and the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, F1 and M1 non-immigrant visas from DHS and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, national file of Customs and Border Arrival Departure Transaction data from DHS, refugee and asylum visas from DHS and Department of State, worldwide refugee and asylum processing system, national level passport application data from state, master beneficiary records from the Social Security Administration, and CMS Medicaid and CHIP information system from the Department of Health and Human Services. Now, Trump's move to block illegal aliens from being counted, I think, will surely be tried against the Evenwell v. Abbott decision from 2016, when plaintiffs in Texas were trying to exclude all non-citizens from the apportionment of legislative districts in the state. And the Supreme Court held unanimously then that, quote, as constitutional history, precedent, and practice demonstrate, a state and locality may draw its legislative districts based on total population. Then, again, plaintiffs were objecting to Texas's plan to count the total population, including non-citizens. The Supreme Court held in Texas's favor. Now, there is some thought that this might preclude what Trump is trying to do here. I certainly thought so back in 2019 when the Supreme Court issued this decision. And I thought that, that's going to basically mean that this is not going to be able to, because of this decision, you won't be able to affect the apportionment. But one thing I hadn't considered is what Trump is saying here is that total population there's a bit of discretion there. You don't include tourists. You're not including diplomats. Sometimes, for example, military personnel stationed overseas has not been included. So given that they're not merely counting every single person who happens to be in the state at the time of the census is taken, but they have to actually make decisions about, is that person a tourist? They're not a permanent resident, things like that. Illegal aliens are not permanent residents. They're not legal residents either. So I think there's a stronger case than people think to actually exclude illegal aliens, even under the Evenwell decision. Now, we can kind of guess like how the Supreme Court's going to go on this, but reading the law as it is and reading what the president's justification is, I think there's at least a case to be made here. Trump writes in the memorandum, quote, "The Constitution has never been understood to exclude every person who is not physically in a state at the time of the census. For example, federal personnel overseas at various times have been included and excluded from the populations of the states in which they maintain their homes of record. The discretion delegated to the executive branch to determine who qualifies as an inhabitant includes authority to exclude from the apportionment base aliens who are not in a lawful immigration status." So again, Trump wants to separate citizens and legal residents from those who are either here on temporary visas or are here illegally. And that, I think, is different from what the Supreme Court was considering in the Evenwell decision. So I think I might have had it wrong last year when I was saying that this couldn't be used to affect the apportionment where the president was going to have illegal alien populations counted. That's clearly what the president's doing, and we'll find out what the court says about it. But I'll leave you with the close here. The case is stronger than you think. If persons with temporary travel visas have been excluded constitutionally in past censuses, then why should persons who overstay those travel visas be included? The same can be said for illegal aliens who never had travel visas to begin with and who are subject to deportation. If tourists and visa overstayers aren't included, then neither should illegal aliens be included. That's the commentary. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a good day.